Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we have ourselves some tracks off of the, I believe this is an album titled What Was, What Is and What Could Be from C.O.S.T, C-O.S.T. And if we switch over to here we have ourselves the track or the album on the screen. Here we've got the art for it here, nice and big. This is from Brandon Bowling and Gino Sanford, released on February the 9th, 2024. So if you want to check it out after this, you can. But we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with what was, what is, and what could be. Let's go. Strong start with the guitar with bass and drums.
Lord, what I should do, whatever it is, your holy grace shines through. You are the shining light, tell us what to do. You say to trust and I believe in you.
I like the vocals, the harmonies there are kind of dope, and the bass and guitar sing nicely on each other. The drums are good too. They're a little bit loose, but that's okay. Adds to the organic nature of it, you know.
What could be? Show me what to do. I believe in you. What was is now the past. What is? Make it good and last. What could be will set us free. I know you'll set us free.
Great transitions with those tom fills there. And the bass line is really active as well. I enjoy the fact that we're moving around the fretboard like that.
Out of what we can, because I trust I'm in your hands. Times will change, will rearrange the life that we once knew, because we believe in a holy God who will always pull us through.
Great vibrato on the bass tone there.
Change. What is up to you. What could be? Show me what to do. I believe in you. What was is now the past. What is? Make it good and last. What could be will set us free. I know you'll set us free.
I think that's a great first sort of interaction with this track there. You know, what was, what is, what could be. I think it's about someone who is talking about the fact that they can't change the past. You've got control over the present. And we mentioned like the Holy Father and everything there at some point. So I'm wondering if what could be is kind of asking for guidance on what is possible in the future, a bit of help, or just kind of like at least recommending people sort of keep an open mind to what happened in the future. But it's an interesting way to start an EP anyway, considering it is the title of the EP. You kind of get the feeling that the rest of the EP, or the album should I say, I keep saying EP, it's an album, the rest of the album could be like that. So I think that's cool. It's interesting stuff to discuss. The vocals kind of remind me of Creed a little bit. I don't mean to sort of pigeonhole it, especially this early, but they have that kind of like aesthetic to them. I enjoyed the arpeggiated guitars there, playing some interesting sort of like minor triads, as well as some unusual sort of chord shapes there. Kind of messing with some chromatics, maybe the bass line exploring the scale relevant to that, and the fretboard, and the drums with lots of interesting eighths to the triplet and 16th note grooves, maybe even some triplet 16ths. It's a situation where I appreciate the effort that's been put into making the drums more interesting, and as a drummer myself, I like what we're trying to do with the drums. It just feels as if we'd had another couple of takes just to sort of like potentially get some of those parts a little bit tighter to the rest of the backing, it's fine, because it sounds like the guitar and bass were potentially recorded to a click. And the drums, we may have done that as well. That's the only thing I could possibly say to improve it. It's not that we weren't able to play the drums, it's more that I just would have potentially been, if it had been like a little bit tighter, I think that would have been just spot on. But otherwise, I think it's a strong start. I do appreciate the way the vocals were done. I think they were great. And I think if it had more range on the guitars, it might have been more sort of like intriguing as well, like maybe like another sort of like alternate lead to the vocals. But we did switch up the sections and structures all along, so yeah, we were doing okay. We've got a Cowboys Heartache, track number 2 today, so let's do that. Kind of sounds like the kind of, like the rustle of like a cowboy's heels or spurs or something like that.
Under the western sky, a lonesome cowboy with a tear in his eye. His heart's a prairie, vast and wide, but the love he lost is nowhere to hide. Saddle up those sorrows, ride into the night, through the canyons of regret, chasing the fading light.
And like having the vocals in the lower range and then the high to harmonize on top of them is kind of sick too.
Whiskey in his canteen, shadows on the plain.
Because is that octaves? But the harmonica, nice.
Heartache, like a restless train, a worn out guitar, strummed by the fire, tales of love and loss, his only desire, his boots echo on the wooden floor, in the salon of dreams, where he loved her more.
I think that the harmonica tails on top are wonderful. They're a nice addition to what we had previously with the guitars, bass, drums, and vocals. I'm happy we're sort of adding more to it as we go.
Those sorrows, right into the night, through the canyons of regret, chasing the fading light, whiskey in his canteen, shadows on the plain, a cowboy's heartache, like a restless train.
Very used to follow alongside the solo as well.
Cowboy's heart, a broken home, a lone wolf howls in the midnight air as he rides the trail of a love affair. Saddle up.
A love affair. So is this cowboy dealing with, in this sad sounding town, dealing with the sad situation he's in?
Right into the night, through the canyons of regret,
I kind of don't necessarily know if we needed those kicks at the end. I think it would have been nice to have potentially had just things kind of fade out with that last hit. It could potentially be seen as something that's overdone. It's just a little thing because it's like, what context does the kick provide if you continue to do it? And it probably seems like I'm being a bit harsh on the drums. I'm not. I thought that the drums were better in that one. I enjoyed the drum performance a bit more in there, even though the performance I think was a little bit more restrained, which I think was probably to the betterment of it. I think that when the groove is tighter with those chord note accents and stuff like that, with the existing guitar riff that's kind of it's kind of fancy with some of the slides and like pull-offs and hammer-ons it has there alongside the bluesy increments there. Yeah, it's stunning. There's a great chemistry between the guitar and bass and the tightness between those notes and melodies and how they kind of integrate together. And the vocals and the harmonized octave ranges sort of flesh each other out neatly as well. It's great. There's a lot of things to enjoy about Cowboys Heartache, apart from what it's about, which I think is it's about someone who is going through that kind of old day, kind of rustic cowboy desert aesthetic there. Someone who's just got their whiskey, they're drinking their problems away, etc. Just really struggling with the situation they're in after having their heart broken by someone else and not really sure what to do with it. I know there's probably more nuance to it. That's what I heard after like while I was listening to everything else. I think the guitar solo that we had was a nice sort of inclusion there alongside a bit of the foley there with like the movements and the shuffling and stuff like that. It kind of brought you into the world. You could kind of imagine a music video going alongside quite well with this. Yeah, just to give it added context to this, and that might be something to consider later on. But ultimately, it's just, I think the production as well, I didn't really speak about that earlier. I liked the way things are leveled in the mix. The kicks have a great presence to them. They pump, man. They've got a great sort of boominess to them, which isn't too overwhelming. The guitar, bass, drums, and the harmonica as well, with the way it leads over top, was nice and refined. And even though there was quite a bit of it, it never sort of like kind of spoke too much and kind of cool and responded with the sung parts. So it's good. It's solid. I think I prefer this track to the first, but both of them are solid and I can appreciate the positives of them. We got the Cross of Calvalry, track number 3.
In the hush of Bethlehem, on a starlit night, the Father's love descended.
Great legato with the
Son of God, redemption's offering.
I like the backing vocals and how they almost pad like in the background. I'm not sure if that's vocal takes or not, but it sounds like it. Still kind of figuring out the mix with this one, but the guitars and the sides of the way their finger started and arpeggiated is really sort of pretty.
Oh, behold the mystery. Carpenter's workshop, hands calloused and strong, the creator of the universe, who humbly belongs, a teacher, a healer, with compassion untold, in the Father's likeness. His story unfolds. Oh, behold the mist.
I would have preferred some dynamic range in this. I like the fact that we've got a lot of effort into trying to make things interesting and adjusting for different fill bits and different sort of more sort of like traditional quarter eighth note kind of strummed parts there. I would have preferred some points where there were pauses, just to kind of help sort of further split and segment the track.
God with us in history, the Father's love in human birth, a Son to bring peace on earth,
Now, if I'm honest, I'm not as familiar with the subject matter that we're speaking about here. It's not that I have an issue about it, I'm just not as knowledgeable about the talk about the like the only sort of understanding I have, like the whole sort of like baby in a manger thing, is like the Christmas stuff where your baby in a manger with the three wise men and stuff like that. I'm not sure how it relates to a Cross of Calvary. Maybe that's something that's just like extra stuff, like if you know sort of thing. So no disrespect intended. Just being transparent. I think it's an interesting story about that. I think that if you understand what it's talking about, you'll appreciate it. If you don't, you can kind of just hear more of what C.O.S.T wants to talk about and what they believe in. And this is Christian rock, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's fascinating, and I genuinely wish that there was more of it. There might be a whole lot I haven't heard, but I mean, either way, they've told a story which is kind of compelling. I could figure out what was going on to an extent. I feel like there's more nuance I'm missing there, so I don't want to sort of comment too much further on it. I did like what the vocals were trying to do there. I know I mentioned in the sort of track I wanted to have a bit more sort of dynamic range to it so that things were in the same loudness the whole time. It might have been that the post-production was a little bit sort of like not flat, but like again, there wasn't like peaks and troughs. The guitar riffs, though, they were really nice and pretty, I think that the finger-picked sort of arpeggiated stuff was kind of nice to listen to. It was nice and colourful, and there were some interesting sort of extensions there, and the tone of the guitar itself was nice. I can't help feeling like the bass was a little bit more sort of like controlled and restrained in this one, like we weren't as active with it, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. It's just my interpretation of it, is that like in previous tracks you had the bass. There was a bit more bass. I'd have to listen to it again to sort of double compare, but I think if the bass wasn't more active over the fretboard, it was definitely sort of reconciling with the root notes, which was fine. The drums were tighter with this one. I was happy with the performance on the kit. It's just that like other parts of the track were more sort of restrained, so it kind of evened out to like a 7 out of 10 for the performance, I think. I think there was a great chemistry between the elements there. Aside from the dynamic range and wanting to sort of like pauses occasionally, I think it's a good song. It gives an understanding of what C.O.S.T is all about. And I think it's a great sort of like, I think it's a really good effort. So we're going to talk about this album more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this album from an act named C.O.S.T, titled What Was, What Is, and What Could Be. We listened to 3 tracks today, which were What Was, What Is, and What Could Be, as well as Cowboys Heartache and The Cross of Calvalry. Now, I've talked about each of these 3 tracks and what I understand of them inside each of their tracks' respective sessions. So if this is on YouTube, you'll be able to see like the chapters and stuff like that in there and stuff like that, or in the description. But either way, I think that there's a lot of positives with these tracks that I heard today. I really appreciated the stories that were told there individually. The album as a whole, I'm wondering if like Cowboys Heartache and Cross of Calvalry, if they're related to the kind of like past, present, and future focus of what is, what was, what is, and what could be. Maybe the Cowboys Heartache was the feelings of the past that we had there, and as there's what was. The Cross of Calvalry is like the present, what we're doing. I'm just not quite sure, but I think maybe this is one of those situations where you need to listen to the entire album to really get like a cool sort of full comprehension of it. In that respect, if you've liked these 3 tracks today, I'd recommend you listen through the rest on the Bandcamp page or wherever else it's available. But outside of what I think the album is about, there's religious overtones and such, and talks of cowboys and like taking control of the present, planning for the future, etc., and just accepting the past for what it is, because you can't change it. I think the vocals were solid. I did like them for the most part. They kind of had like a late 90s, early 2000s, kind of like Creedish, kind of like almost like kind of grungy, kind of like alt rock feel to them, which I think was kind of neat. They harmonized well with the rest of the backing instruments and formed their own sort of key melodies and hook lines. And for the most part, I really appreciated what they were trying to do there. There were no points where I thought there were any sort of like weak moments, or there's no filler. We kept sort of as far as like in regards to like ornamentation, we had like a bit of legato and stuff like that, but it was more like a storytelling device in the way of kind of layering on top of it and giving extra context to the back instruments and the harmonies and everything like that were abound. So I mean, the vocals were well handled. The tracks were typically between 3 and 4 minutes, which is a good length. It's within that 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, where if you tour it in 2 minutes, you don't necessarily have enough context provided for the tracks. If it's longer than 4 minutes, you're going to need extra parts and components to maybe sort of flesh them out. the structure in order to keep things interesting, because if you have too much of the same, people will just become disinterested regardless of the attention span. It's been like that ever since like the 20th century. I'm not talking like 1 minute tracks here, you know what I mean? But like, I think structurally they were solid. We had similar aesthetics and layers with our instruments. The key components were guitar, bass, and drums with vocals on top in the verses and choruses. We had like a solo section in Cowboys Heartache as well as some harmonica, which I really appreciated. I think that Cowboys Heartache was the higher rated song out of the three today. I think that the harmonica as an alternate lead instrument was fantastic. It kind of call and responded, went back and forth between the vocals when it was there. The guitars were strong parts and arpeggiated broken chords with major and minor, and even some interesting sort of alternative chords such as in What Was and What Is. Working with some chromatics and extensions was neat, and the lead guitar was nicely voiced with a different tone and made it stand out, and provided again a nice foil to the vocals in a higher sort of frequency range. I enjoyed the drums for the most part. I feel as if, again, I commented I think in the first track that I feel the performance could have potentially been tighter if we'd had more time to sort of take more takes with it and sort of really sort of polish it off. I also understand that having a sterilized, perfect, quantized performance is not what you want. So I think it's just about like deciding where like the midpoint is between having like an authentic, organic performance and having something that is just like a little bit sort of perfect sounding. The vast majority of it was good. I do appreciate like the drums were sounding, I think, a lot closer in like Cross of Calvalry and Cowboys Heartache to what I was. So there's definitely progress made, and it makes me think that maybe these albums were recorded over a period of time, which would explain the further sort of sense of chemistry between maybe to like not the most optimal extent, because with Cross of Calvalry I thought there was like less dynamic range than I would have wanted. Cowboys Heartache had sort of like the guitar solo section and like different changes and phrases and stuff like that, and it had more variation or more variety for me, which I enjoyed further. But not that I have an issue with the same sort of chord progression. We didn't have the same chord progression the entire time. There was change with these as well. They were interesting compositions. I'm just a bit greedy, you know. But I think that the guitar parts, the chord choices, the harmonies, etc., are great. The drums, you know, when we did do more with the drums, like in What Was and What Is, etc., there were lots of different 8th, triplet, 16th note fills where even if it could have been a little bit tighter performed, it was still really intricate. There was some really fun stuff they were trying to do there, and I do appreciate, again, as a drummer, I appreciate what they were trying to accomplish. And I think that the vast majority of it suited the song really well. The bass guitar was nice and active in that low end, didn't just stick to the root notes, explored the scale shapes of the triads, and also kind of worked around the fretboard a little bit. You know, there's a little bit of sort of like hammer-ons to pull off as well, a little bit of fancy stuff going on there without taking away anything from the focus of the main focal point, which was typically the vocals, if not the harmonica or the guitar. And yeah, generally these things kind of meshed together really well. For the most part, there was like seamless transitions between points, and I think that there was a great chemistry between the instruments in the mix. I think as well the themes that were here, there was variation per track. None of them were particularly positive. We did have major chords involved, but you never got the feeling that there was no sort of like high energy, super hyper stuff. It was more kind of thoughtful, and it tried to get you to imagine what the listener was talking about. Cowboys Heartache, you know, the title alone kind of gives it away that you're not going to have a happy joy kind of time there. Cross of Calvalry was a bit more sort of like balanced. It had some majors and minors in there, but like kind of amounted to like, it was trying to just get you to sit down and kind of hear it out. And I think the unusual chords that we had with the kind of loop of the Was, What Is, etc., they were intriguing. You know, there was thought put in to make each of these tracks unique. Again, very little filler. In like vast majority of notes were really exactly where they needed to be. And yeah, it's just the studio recording, mixing and mastering, where I think that a lot of it was really positive. I appreciated the presence of the vocals in the mix, whether they were the melodies or the harmonies, as well as the guitar. On the sides there, the bass and the drums, the bass being nice and niched on the lower end of the frequency spectrum, and the drums being nice and one. And the headphones are exactly where you'd expect them to be. There weren't any issues with like any resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum. Things were nice and wide in the stereo field. The bits of Foley that we had in Cowboys Heartache at the start and stuff like that, things kind of surrounding you, was kind of dope as well. I like the imaging of that. I think it was great they sort of managed to mix that in without it being too sort of like weird or kind of discordant. And we also had a bit of Foley, I think, in the solo section was kind of dope. It was still nice and loud without pumping. Again, I would have preferred some dynamic range in the crosses, like a bit of sort of difference in the perceived loudness, but I can't decide if that's like a composition thing or like a production thing or both. It could have just been a bit too much sort of glowing, but it was still nice and loud without pumping. So the bus compression limiting was handled, and ultimately, I'm happy with this. I think it was good effort. I think overall I got like a 7.15 out of 10, that makes it a good album. You know, for the vast majority of my feedback, I think has been positive. And thank you for watching my review of this album, What Was, What Is, and What Could Be, from C.O.S.T. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and their Bandcamp page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either hell more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.